Welcome, ladies and gents. Chris Andre here. You can find me at BetBoxing on Twitter for boxing-related tweets, or you can subscribe to the channel. Click that notifications button and get a new notification whenever a new video is uploaded. Eddie Hearn has given a fantastic interview to IFL TV. Really worth checking out. It's a long interview, an hour and 15 minutes or whatever, but you can always put it on plus 1.5 speed or plus 1.75 speed, and it'll go a lot. The time will fly a lot quicker, trust me, but it's enjoyable. It was a really good interview. He's essentially coming out there and he's talking about how he feels as though Team Fury never wanted the fight. He feels that Fury, he said, I always believed wanted the fight, but Anthony Joshua always used to tell me he doesn't want the fight, and now I'm starting to believe he doesn't. Now, we'll get to that in a moment. In fact, before I continue, let me just say this. A lot of people, I've just put out a video a couple of days ago on Manny Pacquiao, and I said, you know, it's Manny Pacquiao and Spence, and I'm asking the question, if Pacquiao wins, is his legacy greater than Floyd Mayweather's? And I initially expected more people to go from the sort of Floyd Mayweather fan base to go nuts at me for even asking the question. He beat him, how can you ask this question, that sort of thing. I did get a couple of Floyd fans say that, but I was shocked that the vast majority that came at me were Manny Pacquiao fans. And listen, the majority were casual fans. You could see they weren't really boxing fans at all, but there were some hardcore Pacquiao fans too, hardcore boxing fans that came at me, and some of them made a very good case that Manny Pacquiao already has a better legacy than Floyd Mayweather. That's fine, but it's a legitimate question to ask when you consider the two magnificent careers of these two fighters. It's a perfectly legitimate question to ask, but people from both sides were incapable of seeing it as a legitimate question. And often what can be the case is that when you are dealing with any sort of emotive subject, a person is so emotionally invested in that subject that they are shackled by their emotion. And so they will hide behind the shield of cognitive dissonance rather than have to force themselves to confront any set of facts or any kind of evidence that is presented to them that might contrast their existing worldview. I don't want you guys to be doing that here, okay? This is a channel for critical thinkers. Listen, there's no such thing as bias. There's no such thing. Because even if you, as freedom of bias, there's no such thing. Because even if you want to be completely neutral, you already come with an existing set of values or ideas. And you use those values and ideas to judge any particular topic. So if you're judging a fight of two fighters you've never seen before and you don't know, they could look exactly like each other. They could be wearing the same color shorts. They could be from the same country. You literally look at it and you think, you know what, I'm completely neutral here. But you might be a sucker for a jab, or you might be a sucker for an aggressive fighter. And you will judge the fight according to that bias. So you might think, yeah, I'm completely neutral, but he fights in a manner that you like, that you enjoy. And so you might score rounds to him without realizing you're doing it. So there's no such thing as being completely free of bias. But the difference between people that I guess are fanboys or that are completely incapable of breaking free from those shackles of mental slavery is that those that seek to try and be impartial, at least try to observe all sides of an argument. And we see it in society in the modern day, whereby fear is a very, very powerful emotion. And when you are in this day and age presenting any amount of scientific data or evidence to people that they might not be getting from what they consider to be an authority, even if the person that you're presenting the facts from has unbelievable credentials, they almost feel as though you're a danger to them because you are questioning their existing worldview, and people panic. Like I said, I don't want that to be the case in this channel. Just because I might criticize Eddie Hearn or question the motives of Hearn or AJ doesn't mean I'm doing that because I'm an agent of Tyson Fury, and vice versa. If I'm critical of Bob Arum or Tyson Fury, it doesn't mean I'm an agent of Anthony Joshua. So please try and bear that in mind while we have these discussions. Now, with regards to this, what Eddie Hearn is essentially saying is that he did everything he possibly could to make this fight happen. That as far as he was concerned, he was desperate to get it over the line, and that nobody believed he would be able to do it. And so they led him down a garden path. When it then became apparent that he was able to deliver, they panicked and thought, uh-oh. And so they backtracked and came out with this story about the arbitration. He said that with an arbitrator, he's never heard an example whereby they have ordered a rematch with a specific date attached. What Eddie Hearn felt was more typical is that damages would be would be the finding of the arbitrator. So that Deontay Wilder would have had to have been paid damages. And as a result, he says, and I quote, the whole thing stinks. Now, I'm not sure, is he implying that Bob Arum sort of wanted that as an outcome and maybe influenced it? Is that what he's implying when he's saying, I've never heard of it and the whole thing stinks, and that they never wanted the fight? I don't think he's talking about undue influence from Deontay Wilder's side, because that wouldn't suggest that Bob Arum didn't want the fight. Now, a counter argument to that is, look, if you've never heard of that happening before, then maybe Bob Arum and Team Fury really did expect damages to be awarded and the fight to go ahead. So maybe it caught everybody off guard. The counter argument to that, according to Eddie Hearn, is, look, they never tried to even pay the guy off. They didn't go through every possible measure to get him to step aside, possibly even with the prospect of a rematch following. Sorry, not a rematch, him getting to fight the winner following their fight between AJ and Fury. So as far as he was concerned, it didn't seem like they wanted the fight. Now, the counter argument to that counterpoint is that Deontay Wilder did ask for, according to Tyson Fury, $20 million. And I've got to be honest with you, if I'm Tyson Fury, and I said this, bear in mind, I said, I bet you he asked for 20 million before it became known that he asked for 20 million, right? Because I don't believe that Wilder would have taken the step aside. I think he wants the shot. But would you pay 20 million if you're Tyson Fury to a guy that you've just battered? Or would you just not go in there and think, you know what, I'll batter him again and I'll make 20 million. I'll get 20 million for fighting him. So rather than paying 20 million, I'll get 20 million. That's a 40 million swing. And as long as Anthony Joshua takes care of his business against Alexander Usyk, we will fight in December. In which case, it's not like I'm going to miss out on that 75 million that I'm supposed to get from fighting AJ anyway. So I'd make 75 million. I'd make 95 million over the two fights rather than making 55 million just to fight Anthony Joshua and leave 20 million on the table to pay off Deontay Wilder. So I can understand the financial motives of Tyson Fury in this regard. I do get it. I understand it. But on the other hand, why didn't they negotiate some sort of step aside money? Because if damages were involved, you know, we don't know. Did they? Did they say to Wilder, listen, we're not going to give you 20 million, but how about 10? How about 12? Did they discuss that? I don't know. But let me know what you think. Was Tyson Fury in on it? Did he know all along? I don't know. Let me know what you think about that. What I will say is this, although I do agree with Eddie Hearn, and I believe that, listen, I'm starting to sort of, you know what Hatman said about maybe it was a method of inconveniencing Eddie Hearn, and they, you know, Arum knew all along. Apart from potentially inconveniencing Eddie Hearn, it's also a bit of a power play, because if they knew that Tyson Fury was tied up for a period of time, the fact of the matter is, Matchroom, DAZN, they're taking over. This is just a reality. And I'm not one of those guys who sits there and affiliates with any promoter or network. To me, none of that's interesting. I couldn't care less. I will care if they're not handling business properly in terms of boxing. So I'm very critical of PBC and the way they demand that fighters cross the street, is the phrase, to come and fight them. That's a whole load of rubbish. Errol Spence should be chomping at the bit to get his hands on Terence Crawford, not be sitting there saying we're not willing to work with Bob Arum, and if you want the fight, cross the street. That's ludicrous, right? But so I'll be critical in that regard, but I'm not sitting here thinking I'm Team Heyman, Team Arum, Team Hearn, Team Warren. Who cares about that? I want to see the best fights. I want to see the best fighters fight each other. I can care less about these promoters, with all due respect to them. That's just the reality. I'm not one of these people that considers myself part of Matchroom FC, so to speak, right? But the point is, I've lost my trail of thought going off on one about promoters, but the point is, I do agree, I do believe that Eddie Hearn did his utmost to make this fight happen. And I do agree that it seems like Bob Arum either dropped the ball, and this caught him out of, you know, it just came out of left field and it caught him off guard, or he knew all along what was going to happen and he's played Eddie Hearn all along. I don't know. Those two things seem to be the most likely. Now, whether Fury was in on it or not, you guys can tell me. Maybe Fury was in on it and he thought, yeah, I'll mess around with them a little bit as well. I'll get Anthony Joshua training for me, then I'll turn him down because I have to fight Wilder. Then when we have to make the fight happen again, you know, it's mind games. I'll get him up for the fight, then he'll get down, then I'll try and get him up for the fight again. I'll play around with him a little bit, with his emotions, with his mentality. I still plan to fight the guy at the end of the year. Or maybe you're one of those people that believes he was in on it all along and he had no interest in fighting Anthony Joshua. Personally, I can't see that, realistically speaking. There's far too much available to him for him not to take the fight. Undisputed legacy, the amount of money we're talking about. I can't envisage a guy like Tyson Fury with his personality trait to be somehow afraid of any fighter. I just can't see it personally. But that might be your view. And if so, leave your comments in the section below and let me know why that's your view. So on this particular topic, I totally understand where Eddie Hearn's coming from, okay? I really do, and I feel for him. But there's an element here that I don't feel for Eddie Hearn at all. And I think Eddie Hearn needs to be called out on this. And that is, he suggested in this interview that Alexander Usyk is the most likely next opponent for Anthony Joshua. And they're looking at August the 21st or the 28th, possibly at Wembley or at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. However, he goes on to say, if that fight doesn't happen, then there's a possibility that we vacate the WBO. Usyk fights Joe Joyce for the title, for the vacant title, and we look at Dillian Whyte or potentially an Andy Ruiz third fight. Now, Andy Ruiz as a third fight, in my opinion, has to happen at some stage in the career of Anthony Joshua. Because when you're talking about legacy, you don't want people to look back and see a one-on-one, a one-all fight against the guy who stopped you and you only won on points. That's going to affect your legacy. He has to try and get the better of Ruiz again, even if it's on points again, so that the head-to-head reads 2-1 Anthony Joshua. That will affect his legacy. That will boost his legacy. The other guy, both Fury and AJ, have to fight if they want to have that legacy of being the man, is the undisputed cruiserweight champion of the world. As long as he's undefeated, they cannot avoid Alexander Usyk if they want that fight, if they want the legacy. They need that fight, as far as I'm concerned. To be undisputed, truly undisputed, not just to have all the belts at the same time, it means there's literally no dispute that you are the main man. Well, for there to be no dispute, you have to also be Usyk. So I don't get where this concept is of, shall we make Ruiz 3 or fight Dillian Whyte? Yeah, you can fight those guys as well in the future, but you can't give up your WBO belt at this stage. Because let's consider this for a second. If Tyson Fury beats Deontay Wilder in July and AJ beats Usyk in August, where does Tyson Fury go from there? He has to have that fight. He has to fight AJ. Otherwise, there's no more excuses. There's no more arbitration. There's no more this is at fault or that's at fault. It's make the fight happen or the whole world will know you ducked the fight, right? That's it. There's nowhere else for him to go. Whereas if you give up that WBO belt, where does that leave you? You're not fighting for the undisputed anytime soon. That's done. That dream's over. So you gave it up to avoid fighting Alexander Usyk. Now, let me just make one thing clear here. I've said in the past, I don't believe that Anthony Joshua is afraid of any heavyweight. In the same way that I don't believe that about Tyson Fury. I believe Anthony Joshua is willing to fight Usyk, Whyte, Ruiz, Fury, anybody. I believe that about Anthony Joshua. But I have in the past, and I will link the video to this video, said that I believed that Anthony Joshua's offer to Usyk to step aside when he wanted the undisputed fight was a poor offer. And I got a lot of hate for that at the time. Because, like I said, a lot of people will affiliate with a particular fighter or promotional team. Well, what do you have to say about that now? Don't you think it's unusual that Eddie Hearn would even say this? Now, I'm hoping that it's just the case of Eddie Hearn using this as some sort of tool for negotiations to say to Usyk, listen, don't get too greedy in the negotiations, because if we have to walk away and go another route, we will. So if you want to make some real money, don't start getting too greedy. Take what you're being offered, and here's your opportunity to fight for the unified championship. But don't try and hold us to ransom. Maybe that's Eddie Hearn's approach. I hope that's Eddie Hearn's approach. Because if this is sowing the seeds for potentially moving down another route, then make no mistake, it's a straight up duck. From Team AJ, not necessarily AJ himself, from Team AJ. Because as frustrating as it might be for Anthony Joshua right now, if he and Fury win, even if he and Wilder wins, if AJ wins his next fight and he gets that mandatory out of the way, well, the next fight should be for the undisputed, and whoever has it, whether it's Wilder or Fury, they will have no place to go but to accept the fight, even if they don't want to. Otherwise, the world will consider it to be a duck. So by using that logic, AJ has to fight Usyk. Let me know what you think here, guys. Was this a tactical move from Fury? Is it a case of Styles making fights? Maybe he thinks, you know what? Despite all my bravado and bluster, I think AJ's got more chance of beating me than Usyk. But I think Usyk beats Anthony Joshua. So let's do this to force him to take his mandatory. He'll lose to Usyk. Then I'll take Usyk and become undisputed. Is that what's going on here? Is it an extra power play? Trying to destroy Matchroom in that regard? Bob Arum maybe? Maybe it's Bob Arum's idea. Let's get him to lose one of his cash cows because we believe Usyk beats AJ. I don't know. Let me know what you think, guys. Thanks for watching, everybody. Chat to you soon. Take care. God bless.